Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Michelle Mabry, Clinical Supervisor with Nutritious Lifestyles. Speaking for you today is Janet McKee, the President and owner of Nutritious Lifestyles, which is a group of 180 dietitians, chefs, and CDNs that provide nutrition and food service consultations nationally. Janet specializes in adult geriatric nutrition, nutrition for renal disease and pressure ulcers, and speaks nationally on nutrition for the healthcare and food industries. She is a board-certified specialist in geriatric nutrition, as well as a diplomat with the American Professional Wound Care Association. Janet has important updates to share with us today to help us open up communal dining while ensuring success with surveys and our budget. So without further ado, Janet, I'm going to turn the stage over to you.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate your introduction. So the purpose of the call is talking about trying to get back to what the new normal is going to look like in the nursing home industry for dining, and also to address some of the concerns that we all are bearing with labor shortages and also food shortages, and how can we maintain our budgets. So again, we're going to be looking at and discussing communal dining. There's a written plan that you can template out of one of the slides and make your own individual plan, because I want to stress that every single plan is going to be a little bit different based on your corporation, where you are, the dining suspects you have, and the number of COVID vaccinated versus non-COVID vaccinated. So again, we want to provide quality dining. We want less weight loss, which I can tell you that the percentage of weight loss since we've had to go back to room dining because of COVID has been astronomical. The national average has reached very high. It's getting better now. Again, the social isolation and the lack of support in the dining area and the lack of interest in food due to depression has weighed heavily on our elderly. So you'll have the tools by the conclusion of this presentation to implement your own successful communal dining program and reignite the fire to get revved up and interested in restarting that if you haven't already. So the participants will also discuss and be able to learn about the budget control issues and also some projected shortages that we know are going to occur. I was out looking at something recently, recreational water sports with one of my children, and the gentleman that we met with there found out I was a dietitian as we were talking, and he informed me that his wife went to Publix in Houston, Florida, and that steak had went up $4 a pound last week. So the goal here is to provide some comprehensive roadmaps or care plans, if you will, to facilitate not only communal dining but survey success. As you know, the revenues are down in every single state because taxes from food sales, from residents, from traffic on the plane, etc., to surveys build the state's revenue. So during many periods of time, there really was not much in the way of revenues. So again, through the grapevine, we're understanding that there will be a lot of focus on finding fines that have monetary entailment. One of those can be using inappropriate sanitation techniques in a communal dining setting, such as the staff member removing the mask and itching their nose. That can easily result, because it's happened to us, in an F80, 880. So these we'll be talking about today: detailed plans for survey target dates, how to get ready, how to implement communal dining in that program, training and education that will require, the coffee that's needed to be done to make it run smooth, and things that we need are a positive attitude, because this is going to be challenging if you have to do alternative seating arrangements, which we think in most cases you will. Teamwork, administrative support, and then we will be glad to provide resources to make this a success. So I am familiar with many different corporations. We service different buildings all over the United States, and our goal today is to talk about how to reduce the incidence of 812 and F80 because the fines for that, if it's a repetitive fine, can be up to $15,000 to $20,000, and that takes away money that we're going to need because we know our food bills are increasing. So again, we are focusing on avoiding fines, focusing on the nutritional care of our residents. We don't want that energy to go to resurveys. We want to get it right the first time. So there's a rule that I believe in management: inspect, do not expect, and use QAPI tools anytime you're working in a nutrition service area, and anytime that you're especially starting a new process. People need education and training, and people do what we inspect. They never do what we expect. So unfortunately, I was hoping that with the advent of the new CDD standard, that if you were vaccinated, you did not have to wear a mask. And I was hoping that that would include staff. Unfortunately, it does not. So our staff will still have to wear PEE equipment, and we will continue to have to disinfect the front of the house after each use. Now, the actual ruling I read stated, excuse me, that you would only have to disinfect what was used heavily. Well, I'm not sure how you can tell if the juice machine or the coffee machine or something was used heavily, like a chair arm. So I think we're going to have to disinfect still after each dining, because I don't see another choice. So it's important, because they will be checking this, and they will be checking to make sure that you're using an EPA sanctified, SARS complete, effective sanitizer / in this case, you're going to need to disinfect it from the front of the house. The back of the house, of course, with sanitizer. Do not trust any vendor. Look for yourself. So why do we want to reopen the dining rooms? Well, I just did a staffing analysis for a project I'm working on, and for a dependent diner in a dining room, it can take 15 to 20 minutes to help set them up and help feed them, etc. As far as labor goes, if that same person is a one-on-one dining room, just to help a dependent diner that has some level of skill set, it can take another 20 minutes. By the time they walk the tray down there, they set it up, they clean it up, so it's a staffing issue. Also, we know that being around people is a positive cognitive stimulus for the elderly. People that enjoy socialization, it stimulates appetite. We know that weight loss, when there's a lack of appetite, promotes pressure ulcers. Because as we know, the pressure ulcers occur on bony prominences. When you have bony prominences on your coccyx bone, your elbows, the vertebrae on the back of your neck, and so we know that reopening the dining room to get those improved appetites, family and resident satisfaction, labor efficiency is absolutely necessary. But with our labor shortages as they are throughout the country, how are we going to do this? Well, first thing, we need to have a plan. So, and our plan may not always work the way that we want it to work, but we have to come up and we have to break it down. And I tell my son, who's trying to decide what school he's going to go to when he goes to college, it's so overwhelming to look at it. Just break it down in small pieces. So the first thing you have to, as a company, a corporation, a facility, you have to get administrative support, because it may take resources that we need to look outside the box and utilize to make this happen. You have to have nursing support, and you have to have rehab support. You have to have the entire facility, maintenance, housekeeping, etc. You have to have a system for identifying eligible residents. Certainly all residents are eligible, but you cannot mix vaccinated with unvaccinated, or you have to have complete separation. So our recommendation is develop a system to identify vaccinated residents. Those residents can come to a dining room without a mask. which is so much better for them. I hate wearing a mask myself. I can't tell you how happy I was when I found out that at the YMCA, if you were vaccinated, you did not have to wear a mask. If the residents are unvaccinated and you have a number of them, it makes complete sense to have a non-offensive communication and identification system of how you're going to feed those individuals, and can you use a smaller dining room somewhere. And again, our staff must be masked up, if you will. You have to look and see, how is that going to affect my staffing? So if you have a large number of non-vaccinated people, you're going to have a separate seating or a separate arrangement, a separate area for them, or have a large room divider. So you have to think, how am I going to handle this? Where's my location? And really, what is my menu going to look like? So tray service, again, if you can avoid that and have a vaccinated populace, you can use family style and dessert, soup carts, make simplistic chef choices, alternates. However, if you have a non-vaccinated, even one person in your dining room that's a resident, non-vaccinated, the entire facility inside that dining room, every single resident must wear a mask. So it's important that you look at your state regulations. Again, the CDC rules that if you're vaccinated as a resident, don't have to wear the mask. You have to make sure your seatings are reasonable, and you have the staff to do that. You're going to need to go back to seating charts like we did in the old days. Not so much sit wherever you want, because we have to work around that as much as we can. We have to inform the residents that they're applicable for dining in the dining room again. We have to train our staff that this is our goal, and we have to in service, and this is how we think we can achieve that goal, and how can we work toward making it a win-win for our residents. How can we do the staffing? How can we do our menu? So one idea might be to have one meal a day versus all 3 meals a day. So again, once you decide your dining program, make your trigger points of what's critical to make sure it's flowing correctly, and develop a quality to instill that compliance with those standards. Nutritious Lifestyles does have a communal dining policy, and it can be adapted. I'm happy for you to use this. And again, we want those people to come out of the dining room that are willing to, that have been vaccinated, and even those that are not, as long as they dine equal but separate. Residents that are completely vaccinated, and again, most people are having to get the 2 shot deal. However, there is that new vaccination that's just 1 that has not been used in Florida widespread, but I would say that 80% of our residents in the Floridian facilities, as well as Texas, have been vaccinated. So that's a wonderful thing. So, but even if your staff are vaccinated, they still have to use personal protection equipment. If even one resident in the dining room is not vaccinated, the entire room must mask up and use social distancing. And that's kind of defeats the purpose of them being able to be unmasked, congregate, chat, and enjoy their meals. So if you are going to have a number of people that have not been vaccinated, you're going to need to continue social distancing and alternative dining schedules. So when you have a fully vaccinated area, you don't have to do social distancing. You can mask down, so to speak, or no mask, and you're good to go. You can go back to somewhat life as usual, except your staff are going to need to wear their PPE. Now, if you have unvaccinated residents, I would suggest having a separate but really nice dining experience for them, just in a different location or a different time, and disinfect after use. Again, it's really hard when you're 6 foot across from somebody, can't hear, and a lot of our residents have visual impairment. It's really hard to get them excited about going to the meal if they can't talk to people and see people. And speaking as a person that's worked in the industry for 34 years, I can tell you that 89-year-olds, many of them, even with the hearing aid, they cannot hear effectively unless it's close distance. So we want to continue to encourage our residents to wash and sanitize their hands, and that includes staff, especially staff that are assisting residents with eating food. Rome was not built overnight. It's perfectly acceptable if you don't have the staff to consider slowly starting communal dining, one step at a time, one meal safely on Tuesday and Wednesday. Get your steps in place and revise your stance. So kind of have a practice or a pilot meal. Learn from your mistakes of what does work, what doesn't work, and then go back to it. So again, no positive residents should be in communal dining. So just to be clear, we know that one vaccine that's been widely distributed is 95% effective, Pfizer, and I believe Moderna is the other one that's 95. I think Pfizer's 97, Moderna's 95. But there's another one that's a little bit less than that now that has come out. There'll be more coming out all the time. Because your resident gets that vaccination does not mean that they're never going to be positive. As we speak, several of our facilities have had vaccinated individuals that later tested positive. And again, we have to go through the masking, etc. They certainly cannot eat in the dining areas. So we need to get back to making dining a fun experience. Over the years, I have noticed that dining is the most important thing for these individuals. When you're 85 years old, who really cares about a diet except to enjoy the food? So a 4th of July menu that's exciting, having coleslaw or salad, a Texas burger, cottage fries and baked beans, and blueberry. If they're diabetic, it is what it is. Eat cake, be merry and happy. But we want to make our food back a focal point. We have not been able to do that. Now that things are opening up a little bit, it's obvious that it's time to move forward on this. So again, it's essential that your staff wear PPE equipment. It's important that if your kitchen staff is wearing a mask and gloves, they do not move the mask up, scratch their nose, and wear the same gloves and pull it down. That could end up in a citation during the survey. It's just not good practices. So again, staff feeding dependent diners cannot hop from one resident to the next in this day and time. They have to work together and make sure that they are working at the table, setting up one, getting them to eat, removing gloves, going to the next person, setting them up, pairing, serving, and assisting. You can't go from one, not wash your hands, not change your gloves, and go. That's why it's important to have hand washing stations available for those individuals feeding our residents, and also have extra gloves and also sanitation guidelines available for them, and also sanitation of the hands, like with an alcohol scrub rub. Again, we all must continue, including our dietitians, our dietary managers. We all have to wear masks. We have to continue to change gloves, and gloves are an automatic F812, and it can turn into an F880 depending on the surveyor. An example of that would be a piece of bread was dropped on the floor. The lady picked it up. She put it back on the tray. The resident ended up getting it, and it was an automatic F812 and an F880. So again, we have to be prepared that some of these are going to be tied in to this new tag F880, because it is an increased amount of money through funding that our various states can collect. So we need to make sure that we're looking at hygiene when we're going in. Are our people still wearing masks appropriately, gloves? Are they avoiding cross-contamination? And we must be prepared as managers and as dietitians to inspect the kitchen, check the dining rooms, and educate as we go along. We have to be survey prepared. So to be prepared, you must train. To be prepared and trained, you must educate and have educational tools. So if we expect people, especially now with a lot of staffing turnover, and if we expect people to wear masks, then we have to train them how to do it properly. And you can look down at the don'ts and see someone's pulled their and down by their nose. Then you see someone else that was itching their nose. So there's a proper and an improper way of wearing masks. We have to train and hold accountability, because people that are just new to our field and come into the facility, be a teenager that's got a part-time job during the summer working in the kitchen, that's 20 years old, college student, and they don't remember not to touch the mask or take it off and reuse it. So we have to continue to remind them of this. We have to continue to sanitize the back of the house. Sanitation does not kill all germs. It only reduces the germ count. So a major focus going forward is going to be, is your kitchen clean? I can tell you that if you have a messy, dirty kitchen, that surveyor is going to dig deeper. We don't want them to dig deeper. We want to be able to send our coffee and donuts and have them be happy enough sitting in the conference room. So we want to keep our kitchens clean and organized like this one. We want to avoid F812 and F880, and that will help us have less stress down the road. So here's some sanitizing tips. Make sure that you're looking on how you're going to sanitize using equipment appropriately, such as your dish machine. Make sure and we will still have COVID units, because COVID is not gone. We've only reduced it. And we don't really know how effective for the rest of our lives the vaccine will be. We may have to get vaccines on an annual basis. We were just waiting to see what will happen. Using proper sanitizing solutions, such as your chlorine sanitizer, your quat, and keeping extra bleach on hand. Again, we want to train people to use hand washing and gloves. We want to make sure they're not touching their hair, their mask. We want to make sure they're changing gloves in between cooking, cleaning, and dirty dishes. We want to make sure that they are using proper sanitation. You should change gloves regardless every hour on the hour. So you want to make sure that you're survey ready 24/7. So how would you do that? You train your staff. You inspect, not expect. You do QAPI every single solitary month. You look at sanitation. Here's a very short checklist that can be very helpful by the dietary manager participating in this, the dietitian, and even occasionally bring your administrator in. So as a tool to help your dietary managers and assistant managers and even your cooks stay on task, by using this daily manager checklist, go and look and see if your people are doing what's inspected, not expected. And I will guarantee you this checklist will be very, very beneficial. So it's important to keep a book of survey preparedness. Surveyors are human. If you can demonstrate that you are having a challenge, for example, with a puree diet getting bread, but yet you have in-service and trained, and the person makes a mistake, the surveyor most likely, if you should sell an in-service manual and a survey preparation book, that you're training your staff is going to be a little bit more forgiving. They may still cite you, but it might be a D instead of an IJ or an F880. So it's great to have a team effort. We are working with a corporation now that's making it mandatory for administrators to walk through once a month at the dietitian to do quaffing with the dietary manager. So we're working on partnership to identify issues and educate using in-services and sign-in sheets prior to the survey or not post-survey. Again, our goal is to educate and keep people in the loop of what we can be to do proactive versus reactive. Pre-planning makes success. So survey readiness is, and then now with COVID, again, the building, all states are back on survey shift, just like they were before. We need to be ready 24/7. The surveys still can come on the weekend and after hours, and they're much more punitive and out for blood, one of our dietitians said. And because of post-COVID, and many people believe that's to help build up the revenue base again for the states. Now, sadly, COVID has left a very, very ugly mark. Even the most designer masks are still not favorably seen. I don't care if I never have to wear a mask again, but chances are I certainly will if I go into a facility, because I see that's going to be a long-term effect. But we want to talk about what it has done and how it's affected us and what can we do about it really is really the most important thing. So right now, not only is inflation here for food, it's in gas. In Orlando, Florida, gas was $2.72 last week or week before last. It's $2.95. We expect inflation to go up. How is that going to affect you? Well, I don't know if you remember, about 8 years ago, gas was going up. And again, the Cisco, the Reinhardt, the Benny Keith trucks, all vendors had to have an extra surcharge for when the truck stopped to cover their gas. So I have just met with several vendors and have been reviewing the commodity sheet, and what I have determined based on expert data is that we can expect a 3% overhaul increase in food. Poultry is anticipated to go up 14%. In some cases, some products such as breast and chicken wings are expected to go up more. Beef is expected to go up to 8% and dairy 3%. I expect it's going to be more than 3% just based on what I'm understanding from the labor shortages. So right now, we know that pork trim to make pepperoni and sausage has went up 72%. That's earth-shattering. Chicken breast is up. And again, we cannot make the cost of food go down. So what can we do to try to minimize the effect as much as possible? Well, I gave a lot of thought and a lot of time, looked at a lot of order guides, and it came to me that comfort food may be our best bet. As you're depressed, the level of serotonin in your blood, which is a chemical or hormonal issue, can be compromised. Comfort foods bring those numbers back up, such as pasta, such as mashed potatoes, such as cobbler, such as desserts, such as breads and sheet cakes. And the common denominator in this is it increases your serotonin, but they're very, very low cost issues. So you can make using canned number 10 blueberry cobbler mix, and also brown sugar and vanilla, and also flour. You can easily whip up a blueberry cobbler, which is very tasty, caloric-ridden, and really will fill our residents up. So going back, we know that there's inflation is here, but we want to still serve our residents quality food. So how can we do that? Well, number one is, I'm sure you're aware that sugar-free products and salt-free products, number one, don't taste good. Our tongues, and our olfactory buds as we age, decline. So they need more flavor, not less. The clinical evidence shows there's absolutely little to no benefit in putting a 90-year-old on a diabetic diet. they need consistent carbohydrates. It is immaterial that they have a 1,200 calorie diet when the food is fat-free, low-fat, sugar-free, and does not have the same appeal as a regular diet. So again, our residents will love regular diets if given the chance to have them. If they don't want it, believe me, most of them are verbal enough to tell you. So this gentleman, instead of being on a 1,200 calorie diet, he's got French fries, chicken strips, and it looks like garden peas, and he loves it. Again, the research indicates there is no benefit of a strict ADA all diet or 2-gram sodium diet. If they're eating 50% of a regular diet, they're getting less than 2 grams of salt a day anyway. So, customizing your menus. So go back and look at your menus. Do they have what our residents want? In Texas, you're looking at border towns require a lot of Latino food, a lot of rice, a lot of beans. In the area of Houston, you might have a large Indian population. In Madison, Florida, you're going to have what I call a country gentry style. Texas, they have a lot of people want beef. Southern, collard greens and black-eyed peas, mashed potatoes and fried chicken. Midwest is meat potatoes. And the northern area has all kinds of different dialect of food. So here's an example of relatively inexpensive. We took the meat portion that was 4 ounces and we marked it down to 2 ounces of edible portion with gravy, green beans, potatoes au gratin, and a frosted brownie. Now we have an egg in the morning. So we again are getting that extra 7 ounces of protein in the morning. Latino menu. This has 2 ounces of beef, pepper and onions, black beans, great source of protein combined with the rice, tortillas, very culturally designed meal. The Indian menu is curry food, again, using less chicken and using more rice. And again, we want to serve foods that are appetizing and delicious. So if your food doesn't look good, it's pointless because residents will not eat food that is not appetizing. So we want to focus on making your food look good, taste good, and the variety you would want to eat. I go through the nursing home budgets and diets all the time, as well as behavioral facilities. And I always think, why do we always have the same portions? So if you go to any nursing home in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, or Texas, you're going to see an awful lot of people. The females are the more prominent gender in the nursing home industry for many different reasons. But you're going to see a lot of Mrs. Jones that weigh 100 pounds. And they only need 1,200 calories a day, but yet we give them 2,400 calories to a regular diet. And then we end up piling up our trash can because we have calories in the trash. In this case, a 1,200 calorie dump of pure waste because the resident doesn't want it and can't eat it. So you can think outside the box and think about, as your dietitian reviews your admissions, you do an M&A, and your dietitian reviews them and makes a brief note. Even in a low-risk resident, they may love to be on small portions. They may be overwhelmed because many of them say that they get large portions and are overwhelmed. This resident only needs, she weighs 100 pounds. For females, you multiply times 12. That gives you the number of calories that needs. She needs 1,200 a day. So the rest of the food is going in the toilet. So the small portions diet has regular meat sizes and half portions of starches. So that will meet her needs and reduce the waste. And it's really sad to go in a facility and with the cost of food going up and seeing so much milk, so much starch, so many meats going in the trash can. Portion sizes should be based on what the resident wants and individually assessed, not what we want them to have and based on the resident's request. A 300-pound gentleman needs a whole lot more calories than a 100-pound lady, but yet for the last 25 years, the menus I have reviewed, it's usually the same amount. So we need to focus on needs and what they want versus what we want for them. Getting back enhanced foods. Well, that sounds like a really good food, enhanced. Well, let's talk more about that. That's the pudding that's made with, instead of milk, it's made with half and half. It's very rich, it has sugar. The mashed potatoes are made with dried or canned milk, half and half, and also butter, and they can also have cheese in them. So following your menu is key to cost control. If your menu is costed out at $5.50 a day and you don't follow it, there's no way you can stay within budget. Following your recipes allows us to ensure that we have a quality product. If your recipes come from Gordon's, US Foods, or any other purveyor, these recipes are costed out and they work like science. And your menus are costed out. So unless you follow that recipe to the letter and your menu, you will have a challenge staying on budget. Using your GPO agreements, whether it's Navigator or Forum or whoever you use, make sure you're maximizing those good buy items and those rebates. Work with your vendors. Work with your dietitian closely. The dietitian for Gordon's, Reinhardt, PFG, whoever it is, Cisco, work with them. Look at your order guides. Do not let people sub out things that are expensive for you, because this happens all the time. During the worst of the meat shortage I think it was last June, May or June, we found that there was no hamburger available, and one company was charging $8 a pound for hamburger, which was unacceptable. So again, we want to make sure that the substitutions that our vendors make meets our budget. And if it's not, if you can't get chicken breast and they send you turkey and it's at least the same or more, and it's not a cost saver and a quality saver, then send it back. So you don't want to have hamburger on your menu and your vendor send filet mignon, because there's a $15 price differential, and we simply can't do that. Collaborate with the dietitians to allow us to have less costly portions of high-end protein. For example, many menus have 6 ounces of, these are very large proteins. So 2 to 3 ounces per meal is more than adequate for most residents. So if you have an egg in the morning, or cheesy eggs, which is about 2 grams of protein, you have 2 ounces at lunch and 3 ounces at dinner, you're good to go for the day. But again, this chicken breast weighs 6 ounces, and these are 2 pork chops. You frequently see that on menus. You want to make sure that you elaborate on, or you collaborate with your dietitian. You look at your pricing, you look at your order guide. So if you know that your vendor tells you that chicken breasts are up 32%, then we want to go back and find a better substitute, and you can use turkey cutlets the same way that you can use chicken cutlets a lot of the times, especially the breast. So again, for fully vaccinated dining area residents, goodbye tray line. Why waste the effort on the tray line and making all those trays up you have to wash, in the labor case? Why not change them to regular diets, embrace communal dining, and ensure we put our money and systems in our dining program helping these individuals eat? I prefer food carts. They cost less. A food service staffer can be behind them in nursing coming up. We can go to restaurant dining, and I tell you, if a resident just wants a half portion of protein, a half portion of lima beans, a portion of rice and applesauce and no bread, I'd rather serve them that than give them 4 ounces of a pork chop, salad and potatoes and bread and dessert, knowing they're not going to eat even 50%. So mobile meals produce less waste, they result in less weight loss, they improve labor, and they increase intakes. For the fact that your olfactory bulbs decline, that's the bulbs in your nose, decline as you age, it is very, very beneficial to have a different positive smells in the dining room which come from food, such as fresh baked cookies, cobbler, etc. So this is an example of a mobile food cart that is shipped out from the kitchen, stocked in the kitchen, and sent out, and it works really well. So having your bread, if you can't do that, having your bread and soup cart is fabulous. Look at the soup cart. That also can have your bread on it. And then there's a very inexpensive dessert cart, and also there's an inexpensive soup cart. Look at your crock pot. They came from Walmart. So make sure hot foods are hot and cold foods are cold. That causes waste when you have lukewarm food. Nobody wants to eat them. And consider a soup cart. A soup cart, even in the winter, it's cold, cold, cold. Even in Texas and Florida and Georgia in the summer in these buildings, you'll see that residents are wearing sweaters. We can still serve soup and cornbread for our start of the meal. And if it's a fortified soup, we can meet all their needs. In addition to that, we can reduce waste. So if you eat cream of fortified tomato soup and blueberry cornbread, and you weigh 100 pounds, there's a high probability you are not going to want the full meal. Here's a soup cart protocol. So you're welcome to use that. We're wanting to give our residents choices, soup and crackers versus a full meal. And again, here's a protocol to help you install that should you decide to. And again, you want to use a soup cart only in the vaccinated areas. So again, about 20% of clients have dysphagia now, and 10% or more are on some kind of consistent, modified consistency regarding fluids. So let's look and think outside the box how we can make our food natural. Instead of thickening something, perhaps we can use apricot juice as for a drink versus having a thickened liquid. Can we make our foods more nutritionally dense? Instead of having a pureed food that doesn't look as appetizing, perhaps fortified mashed potatoes or a yolk plate or fortified pudding might be an option that bangs up the calories, bangs up the protein, and meets the needs. Of course, commercial supplements currently, especially with meals, are not found to be a long-term benefit. It's better to use food first that people like. Research trends indicate people like to eat food. So if you look at this and you give them a snack of a peanut, and they cannot have dysphagia when they have peanut butter, a half a peanut butter jelly sandwich in a carton of milk or 8 ounces of milk is equal to 350 to 500 calories, and it's under 40%. And wouldn't you rather have that than a medicinal tasting, smelly can of Ensure that when you open it smells? Excessive supplement costs, including Juven, including Enlive, they are all very, very expensive. And who personally would want the same vanilla shake 3 times a day? Who would want Juven 3 times a day? These excessive supplements can cause taste fatigue, and they also can cause you to have expenses you don't need and resident satisfaction. And somebody's got to pass all those milkshakes that sometimes end up back in the trash. Fortified foods and snacks, since we're feeding our residents anyway, are an excellent way to increase calories and protein. And those are 2 examples of such. So here's a sample of fortified meal. About the worst thing you can do is have fortified oatmeal every single day. People get tired of it. So these are just some examples that you could have a fortified hot cereal every morning. Grits, oatmeal, farina, different kinds of cereals. Fortified pudding at lunch. Peanut butter cup is very well received. In dinner, having a various fortified soups, a different one every day, and you can freeze them in smaller batches if needed. Snacking is important. High-calorie, high-protein snacks are wonderful for our elderly. It helps fill them up and gives them a lot of calories and choices. It's great to have food, and of course you want to keep the nursing closet locked, to have foods and hydration available 24/7 for our residents. Nutritious foods, fortified foods, or inexpensive snacks. Pudding. Maybe if you have a dry pudding mix, make it with whole milk. using chocolate milk, ice cream, enhanced cookies, which have powdered milk and enhanced pudding, and ice cakes are excellent source of calories. Real food can be had through budget control, and it definitely makes our residents happy. We would love to help you with cost control. We have pediatric dietitians, eating disorder-related dietitians, geriatric dietitians, not geriatric age, but their specialty is geriatric. We would love to help you with your CEUs. We would love to help you install QAPI. We'd love to share our nutrition algorithms, menus, and our management team's 35 years of expertise. We'd love to train and associate with our clients.